By the end of this video, you're going to have a lovely list of all of the different crops that you can sow in March. And before we go into that list, it's important that I share a little bit of information about climate. It's a popular request, and for good reason. We all grow in different climates. My last average frost date is mid-May, and so all of my sowing is done with that in mind. So because it's March, the priority is all of the hardy crops. There's a couple of tender crops like tomatoes that need a long season that I will start off in March, but the idea is that those are going to be grown undercover, protected by heat, and a little bit of extra light if you don't have a sunny windowsill. Now, by popular request from a lot of you guys in America, you want to follow along with the self-sufficiency garden, but sadly, because of the nature of printing and the timings, the book isn't going to come out until mid-May. But this what to sow in March, what to sow in April, and what to sow in May is just going to quickly feature the crops that I also sow in the self-sufficiency garden, so you too can follow along and know exactly what's happening. And so on the screen now, I'm just sharing with you a recording of all of the different things that I'm starting off in modules. These are crops that I've specially chosen for self-sufficiency, so ones that provide flavour, that are very versatile in the kitchen, and are pretty good in terms of growing pretty fuss-free. For onion sets, you do have an option. If you don't want to start them off in module trays, you can also plant them directly in the ground from around about mid-March onwards. One of the tender options that I start off in March for the self-sufficiency garden is a couple of courgette or zucchini plants. These are to grow under hoop beds or within a polytunnel, just so you get a little bit of extra zucchini season. And of course, whether you're following the self-sufficiency garden or not, for the vast majority of us, March is the time to start off our tomato seeds. Some of you may have remembered that I had a couple of visitors last year to the garden. One was Alessandro, or Spicy Moustache, and the other one was Benedict from Grow Veg. And I got them both to try this tomato. They both absolutely loved. I think Ben said that it was like the sweetest tomato he'd ever tried.
Oh, crikey. That is the sweetest tomato I've ever had. No kidding. That is incredible.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was not expecting something like that.
Isn't it amazing?
Oh my God, please, thank you.
And I've got it here, so you can also try growing it this year. It's called tomato honeycomb, and it's a lovely flavour. So give it a grow and let me know what you think. A couple of the other varieties that I very much highlight are Green Zebra and Tigerella. Those taste absolutely delicious, as well as Sartre Lois and Black Russian. Those are kind of like my favourite go-to tomatoes. Everything that I sow is never in seed compost. I have this multi-purpose compost. This is not sponsored or anything. I'm just trying to save you money, and there's a lot of things that I see gardeners spend a lot of money and then it kind of affects the returns. But what I use is Melcourt, either their peat-free multi-purpose compost or their organic Silvergrow multi-purpose compost. That's what I start off all of my seeds in, whether it's tomatoes, peppers, celeriac, field beans, anything like that, pretty easy. And of course, another big staple following on from tomatoes that you can also start off in March are going to be your potatoes. I adore these. Now's the time to start off your new potatoes. You can start them off in buckets to kind of grow undercover, or you can plant them outside, but just make sure that you provide frost protection or fleece them in around a month when they start preparing. One of my favourites to grow is Charlotte. Now, quick tip. I never bother with chitting. I don't think I've chitted potatoes for at least 6 or 7 years and still get good results. So don't worry, if you haven't chitted your potatoes, it's not the end of the world. It's not a necessity. They're still going to grow. You know, at the end of when you harvest a potato bed, there's a high likelihood that you forget to harvest a couple of potatoes or you miss them, and the next year they pop up and they grow fine and they give you another lovely supply of potatoes. Those weren't chitted. You don't need to chit. Save yourself some time. Now, I mentioned Charlottes because I grew those in hoop beds in the self-sufficiency garden last year, and it was just the most beautiful crop. They came out so clean, incredibly productive, and really, really tasty. So if you're new to gardening, I recommend you try out those. And for a main crop variety, it's one that I always recommend. It's Sarpomira, mainly because of it tastes really good, I think, but also its blight resistance. And so I can enjoy my growing season and not worry about losing my main crop to blight potatoes. Whenever I garden, I try and make sure that there's kind of the least amount of things to worry about, which is why choosing the right varieties to make sure that the garden's as resilient as possible is a core part of a self-sufficiency journey. Using the list that I shared before, I just want to pick out a few points. The first one is, I mentioned field beans. Field beans are a type of fava bean, just like broad beans are. So it's down to you with you know, if you want to grow some field beans or some broad beans or a bit of both. I'm also growing some crimson flowered broad beans so I can enjoy that visual polyculture effect in the garden. They just look really stunning. And staying with the legume family, I adore peas. So my usual go-to is Oregon Sugar Pod. And the reason why is because I don't need to spend time podding out all of the garden peas. I can just eat the sugar pod with the pea included, the pod, just snack on it. It's one of my absolute joys that I get from the garden is peas. And so anything that you really enjoy from the garden and you know that you're not gonna, you know, get tired of, make sure that you dedicate a little bit more space to that this year. One of the little hacks to become more self-sufficient is just grow the things that you enjoy eating, because there's a much higher likelihood that you want to use those and cook those rather than things that you're maybe a little bit on the fence, like turnips or kohlrabi. Looking ahead to Christmas time next year, March is a great opportunity to start off your Brussels sprouts. I would do these in modules and then I'd plant them on into like a 1 or 2 litre tub to grow on, and then plant them out where they are to grow around mid to late May. And another brassica that I like to start off in March is just a few cabbages. Obviously there's already the Napa cabbage or the Chinese cabbage, but I mean more of like a nice kind of greyhound cabbage. That's one of the varieties that I'll be growing so I can get some harvests in June and July. Asturian tree cabbage is another one that you can start off in March, but for the rest of the stemmed or the large brassicas, the main months that I sow those kind of brassicas is over April and May. The other main category of sowing to do in the month of March is starting off some of your hardy leafy greens. This includes perpetual spinach, lettuce, normal spinach. You could put coriander or cilantro. It's a very nice hardy leafy herb, and mustards as well, or growing peas for pea shoots. I would sow these direct undercover, for example in a hoop bed. You may not have enough space for a polytunnel, but you may have enough space to build a hoop bed or a cold frame. And if you want to learn how to build a really sturdy one, watch this video here, because that for a colder climate or cooler climate is going to massively extend your season, give you more ambient temperatures to grow, to be self-sufficient in winter over salad. So check it out and build yourself a hoop house.